Langkah pertama adalah hal tersulit yang semua orang harus hadapi, termasuk aku. Gak mau nyusahin orang, selalu minta bantuan. Jadi, aku lebih sering menyendiri. Ngabisin waktu ngutak-ngatik komputer sendiri. Ternyata tanpa sadar bisa membuahkan hasil. Pelan-pelan aku bangun rasa semangatku. Aku memutuskan untuk bangkit dan belajar banyak hal baru. Semakin hari pengetahuanku semakin bertambah. 900 jam belajar machine learning hingga bahasa Inggris. Buat Adi yang dulunya berkecil hati, sekarang jadi lebih berani. Tanpa aku sadarin, ternyata aku udah ngambil langkah demi langkah maju ke depan. Sekarang aku berkarir sebagai AI engineer. Sekarang aku bisa ikut bantu berkontribusi untuk industri kesehatan bangsa. Bantu permudah distribusi dengan bantuan teknologi AI. Bekal pengetahuan yang aku pelajari di Bangkit. Kadang situasi bisa mengkondisikan pola pikiran, tapi aku bisa memilih untuk bangkit. Ambil berapapun langkah maju yang aku mau.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you guys have a nice day today and from good motivation from Kak Adi before. And I hope you guys can learn from Kak Adi. And welcome to our second session, guest speaker. And our theme is thriving in the present and the future landscape. And for those of you that doesn't know me, and nice to meet you all. My name is Montrisma. I am machine learning cohort graduate, Bangkit 2023 batch 1. And how are you guys? I hope you guys have a nice day. And I just want to ask, do you guys already complete your courses and you have still have power and spirit to learn again in Bangkit? You can comment in the chat. And today, I hope you guys still healthy because even though right now in Indonesia we have not really good weather, especially if you live in Jakarta, it's so many raining. And I hope you still have power to learn in Bangkit, and don't forget to drink a lot of water and drink a vitamin. So today we have a nice and great guest speaker, which is Kak Vincent Tantan. And I will tell you a little bit about Kak Vincent. Is previously he worked at Google, he worked at TikTok, and right now he worked as machine learning lead at Meta Singapore. What a great experience and great career. And I hope you guys can learn more. And if you have any question, you can directly comment on the YouTube chat. And I hope you guys still engaged and happy to watch this live. And don't forget, you guys, we will have a point if you fill the attendance link. So maybe we can call Kak Vincent Tantan right now. Halo Kak.
Hello, Risma. Hi, everyone
Halo
in
Kak.
Bangkit.
May I know right now where are you Kak? Are you in Singapore right now?
No, I'm actually currently in business trip, so I'm not in Singapore. I'm also not in Indonesia right now.
Oh, I see, I see. So Kak Vincent, maybe a little bit question Kak. I see that you are right now moving to new company with Meta in 2024. How your day? Maybe you can share a little bit a life of MetaMed. If in Google we call it Googlers, like in Meta we call, I don't know, is it correct or no? MetaMed, is it?
Yeah, I think before they rebranded, they call it Facebooker, but then now they call it MetaMates. Yeah. Yeah, I actually just joined Meta in January, so it's only been like 2 months. But previously, I worked for 4 years in Google in the US, and then because of personal reasons, I decided to move to Singapore and happened to work for TikTok and then Meta. I can share with you a little bit more. Currently at Meta, I'm working for Reels, which is like, if you know, it's the short form videos that Meta has, right? So I'm working for recommendation systems, or like in short form, it's called RecSys. So it's recommendation systems for Facebook and Instagram Reels. Yeah.
Okay, I see. What a great experience, guy. I think I right now I'm moving from TikTok, and right now I mostly open my Instagram, watch some reels video. I think that's one of your product, and like
Yeah.
I think it's better right now for the Meta become MetaMed rather than Facebookers. You know, right in station TV like show like name Facebookers. Maybe that's it from me, and maybe from all of the cohort already want to learn more. And can you share of the experience from your presentation, Kak? It's your time. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Risma. So let me share my screen. Okay, cool. I hope like everyone can see my screen now. Oh, yep, there you go. Yeah, so nice to meet you, everyone. So yeah, my name is Vincent Tatan. I actually was born and grew up from Jakarta. So I can speak Bahasa natively and speak English for my professional language. Yeah, so during Q&A, feel free to just give me whichever language that you are comfortable as well. I'll try my best to answer. And yeah, so I'm currently a lead machine learning engineer at Meta Singapore. Previously, I worked in Google US, TikTok, and Visa. And today's topic is very broad. It's very cool. It's something that people keep like asking me and asking every professionals in IT, how to master machine learning, right? Thrive in the present and future landscape. This is a very big topic, and I would love to share a little bit of my thoughts about this. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, I introduced myself. Yeah. And just a little disclaimer to make sure that there is no like conflict of interest with my company as well. So currently, why I'm presenting here is purely made by my own initiative and not driven by any other hidden agenda, maybe like from Meta, from Google, from TikTok. So there's no agendas that are coming from these companies. It's purely my own initiative to try to work with Bangkit and to work with great people of Bangkit, and hopefully in a good way, I can influence you and try to show a little bit about my experience. So we're all students, we're all learners here, and I would love to learn more from your questions as well. Cool. So just a little bit of today's agenda. I'm going to introduce a little bit more about what I do at Meta. And second, I'm going to talk about why do companies need machine learning, why machine learning. And the third one, I'm going to talk about how to innovate machine learning, what are the necessary steps so that you can master this machine learning. And then number 4, I think this is what every student will think, including me, right? When I was a student, first thing I would think, how do I find a job? How do I separate myself from millions of students out there? Maybe in Indonesia, how many university graduates that you will have every year? It's definitely going to be a lot from all around Indonesia, and even globally, right? Because IT in a global career, right? You can actually work anywhere you want, like London and US, right? And all you need to do is all these technical skills that you learn from machine learning. So I think that's one thing that you want to understand, is that how you can make yourself stand out, right? And then a little bit of like Q&A. So I will spend a lot of times for Q&A because I intend this presentation to be very broad. It's not going to be very super specific on recommendation systems or anything. I do have a separate video for that. But I would like to put a lot more time for Q&A so that I get to understand where your needs are, and hopefully I can explain a little bit and share a little bit of my experience to answer your questions. Okay, I hope that's cool. So yeah, this is a little bit of my career path. So I actually graduated from SMU, Singapore Management University. And at that point of time, I didn't know what I want to do. I came from, I studied like information systems there. And then like after that, I worked in Visa for 2 years. I worked in Google for 4 years, right? So after like 2 years in Visa, and then I worked at Google in the US until August 2023. And then after that, I worked in TikTok Singapore. Actually, if you take a look, it's only for 5-6 months before I move on to Meta, right? So feel free to ask more questions if you want to know more rationales why I moved to Meta quickly. Yep. And yeah, this is actually what I'm currently doing right now. So in Meta, I'm doing Reels practice. So if you know the logo below there, it's actually for Reels. So Instagram has Reels, Facebook has Reels, and I'm working in the product, which is the Reels recommendation system, right? So that's exactly what my team is currently doing. And if you want to know more about what I do, actually we have a public post about how Instagram suggests new content, which talks about recommendation system in a very good detail. And they even talk about like call start problem and whatsoever, right? To make sure that we can cater to improving the engagement and user experience for new users, right? So this is where I am currently. Okay. And then the next one is that I want to talk a little bit about why do companies need machine learning, why machine learning becomes a hot career, at least for this year. I think it's still very hot, right? The very first thing is definitely competitive advantage. I guess like before the pandemic, like none of our parents know about Zoom, for example. Even maybe we do not really touch Zoom that often, but during the pandemic and after the pandemic, then Zoom becomes something that's very useful, and then everything becomes online. So you see like e-payment everywhere, and you see like GrabFood, GoFood, they keep like innovating just to make sure that we can stay at home while we're getting our food, right? So all the informations that are flowing, right, is actually the competitive advantage, right? For example, GrabFood and GoFood, like whatever they're recommending in terms of pricing, it's something they are going to use to solve like having competitive advantage towards their own competitor. So I think that's why we call the year of 2021 as the tech talent war, right? Because they are literally getting a lot more talent so that they can innovate in machine learning, so that they can have competitive advantage over the others, right? And then that's definitely one thing. And the second thing is that machine learning as a product. So if you know like Amazon, they use like cloud services as a product. Google, we have Google Suites as a product, right? We also have like many different kinds of products that we see like in Indonesia. I also took a look and pay attention to e-fishery, which is like the products that in agriculture right now, in aquaculture, right? So I think that's where Indonesia is sort of like heading into, to take a look into those that are very untapped in terms of like machine learning exposure, and then try to think about what kind of products that can make it more efficient, more effective, and inherently it becomes a product of the whole company, right? So if you take a look at e-fishery here, they are actually creating products to look into data analytics, collecting data from the fish health and the seafood health, and then also like creating a product to sort of like dispense the food pellets, right? The fish pellets. So all of those are being used as a product and the revenue generating income. And also recently, right, we take a look at ChatGPT, generative AI coming into place. Suddenly, everyone talks about ChatGPT, everyone talks about generative AI. Recently, OpenAI also has something that's called Sora, which means that you just put a prompt, and then after that, the video will come, right? So you can take a look, the image there, Sora, is actually generated by OpenAI, right? So that opens a little bit of can of worms, like for example, diversity issues and integrity and whatsoever, right? Especially during elections, people have been trying to take a look to how we can make sure that there's no like fake videos for our president or whatsoever, right? So all of these have become an enabler, right? And then suddenly politics, education, and everything talks about it, money flowing to that, and then they're hiring a lot more people there to think about all these edge cases, right? So I think this is like machine learning as an enabler, something that is impossible before. It becomes something that is maybe normal, right? Right? We use our phone. 10 years ago, we don't use our phone, but now it's normal for us to use smartphones, right? So I think that's something, sorry, not 10 years ago, maybe 30, right? Like there's no smartphones, but now there's smartphones. So something like that, machine learning as an enabler. Okay, so I think all of you, right, know how important is machine learning. That's why to bangkit or take like computer science lessons. But the next thing that I want to talk about is that how can you actually dig into machine learning, right? How can you, as a person that don't know about machine learning, for example, try to build something with machine learning, right? So the caveat here is that I'm going to talk about innovations about machine learning as a case study, right? And all of you might be familiar to this production cycle in one way or the other, right? Maybe if let's say that you have edited videos before or movies, right? Or maybe like there are some requests from the clients, right? Then you go through the iterative process, right? And similarly, in machine learning, you have this iterative process as well, where you talk about the business use cases. So it always comes from the problem, right? So the problem is the very first thing to go, and then how to solve it, right? And then we take a look into the data, right? We try to formulate some business solutions, and then we use the data to take a look whether it's feasible. So that's why we call it the feasible studies, number 2 there. And then after that, you select the algorithm, you figure out which algorithm that is suitable. Of course, there's a theorem that's called no free lunch, meaning that no one algorithm can be used for everything. So you cannot just dump solution with AI or generative AI. No, it doesn't work. You need to think about why you use a particular solutions, what are the trade-off and everything. And then it keeps going on, right? By the end of the day, if you create a startups, then you want to find out what products you want to build and whether it has market fits. So similarly, you want to have something that's called MVM, which is minimum viable model, right? A wordplay of minimum viable product, MVP, that startups lingo always use, right? What's your MVP, right? So the idea is that you want to build model quickly, you want to evaluate quickly, you want to present it quickly, making sure that it has some potential impact before you talk about the deployment, right? So by the end of the day, you want to plan for the deployment, you operationalize, you provide all the necessary ecosystems as necessary. For example, if you use like Google GCP, for example, Google Cloud products, then you want to make sure that the latency and the availability to make sure that they can host your models so you can be used for millions of users, for example, for scalability, like Gojek, for example, right? They definitely have models that they can scale to millions of requests every day, right? So those are the kind of things that you need to iterate. And by the end of the day, you will have like more problems coming in, right? And then the whole cycles will come again, right? So this is a very important cycle that you want to pay attention. The very first thing is, of course, start with a problem and then figure out, making sure that you have the solutions in mind to deploy. Okay. All right. And of course, if you dig deeper to what exactly happened during those stages, then I would like to sort of like create this kind of three different steps, right? And those 3 steps are very deep. Feel free to just like, if you want more detail, just ask in the Q&A and I'll try my best to answer it, right? The very first thing is that you want to make sure that data is there. So data collection, pre-processing, making sure that it's prepared for model consumptions, model training, evaluation, and inferences. So that's the second step. So you want to figure out how you can process this data to become a prediction. And then finally, right, is that how can you deploy it with machine learning ops? So a very simple analogy that I always use for this, right, is that is like cooking, right? You're opening a restaurant. So when you are cooking, for example, which is very simple step, right? Your goal is actually to create a dish, right? Satay, sambal, or nasi goreng, whatever, right? And then for you to create nasi goreng, you need to have ingredients. The ingredients need to be fresh. The ingredients need to be, like is fresh from the farm, right? As fresh as possible, so you can create a good dish. And then after that, you need to pre-process it, right? You need to cut the dish. You don't just anyhow push like lettuce or whatever into the frying pan and then like hope everything will work out. No, but you have a process, right, to create the fried rice. And then finally, right, this process of creating the fried rice is actually the model. And then finally, right, if you want to open restaurants, then you need to train, like some cooks to know how to make a delicious fried rice. And then you need to have a server, right, that solves that dish, right? And then you need to have like, the inventory manager that making sure the ingredients are there, are all complete for the chef to just cook upon request. So all of those are actually encapsulated in machine learning operations. So I hope this makes sense. Yep. So just think about it as like opening a restaurant, cooking and opening a restaurant. Okay. And if you don't really remember this, right, then this is what might happen. So this is a very, I think I will have to say, this is a very basic case of like mismatch of business needs and capabilities. So just a little bit of like background here is that Netflix never used its 1 million algorithm. So what happened with Netflix, right? If you know Netflix, is that, everyone would know Netflix. You can just watch movie and then you have recommendation system and whatever, right? So Netflix actually created a competitions and then tried to pit different teams to create different models, and then they evaluate on top of NDCG, for example, which is a very common metric for recommendation system. But the idea is that whatever that is ranked the first, second, and third in the order in your Netflix homepage, for example, it should be something that is in line with your interests, right? As the more interest that you have, the higher the NDCG, right? The metrics that they use. So they try to pit this thing, right? And then the winner, they will give, it actually improve the recommendation system by 10%, and then they will give $1 million, right? So $1 million for the team, right? But the thing is that they couldn't use the solution that this team is producing, right? So they give $1 million, and then they don't get any return of investment from it. And the reasons why is because the model is too complex, right? And then there is no infrastructure that could use this model, right, and then could serve it to you in a way that is reliable, right? So because of that, they needed to discard their solutions, which is like 1 million gone. Yeah, so this is you need to pay attention into the business problems and the solutions, right, to make sure that the supports are there. Okay. And I actually talk a lot more to machine learning operations. I actually deal with machine operations a lot. By the end of the day, machine operations is about how you can scale up your model to be used by millions of users in a reliable manner. Is actually one thing that I'm very, very interested in, right? So I actually shared about it in Bangkit and with Indonesia Belajar as well. So there's also YouTube that's called Indonesia Belajar, which is very good. I recommend you to go to it as well, right? So MLOps are important to build value. And inside here, there's a lot more that's happening, right? So you can see this is a very deep dive deeper into the step by step, right? So let's go through it very slowly. The first one is data, right? So machine learning engineering is the first one is about data, right? So imagine that you have you have a lot of data, maybe like an Excel sheet, right? You have like some revenue or some employees data or some like, for example, even like your internet consumption data, right? Somewhere there in the cloud, right? Hosts in a Firebase or in Amazon or even like Google GCP, right? That's the very first thing that you want to know, right? Is that where you store this data, so data storage. And then the second thing is that you want to explore and validate it. You want to do something that's called exploratory data analysis or something that's called EDA. So this could be something like, let's try to see what's the median of these different features are. Or maybe you can do some PCA, right? Which is like principal component analysis, which is a good way to just say, okay, what features that might be good towards a certain prediction or certain label, right? And then after that, you go through the cleaning, right? After you explore it, you know like, which features might be useful. You go to cleaning. So you make sure that all the data, the null values, or maybe some of the missing or erroneous data are there, are actually being taken care of. So this could be something like, I think in the past, right? For example, like in gender, like global companies, such as Meta or maybe Google, for gender in the past, they would use something that's called male or female, which is a sort of binary, right? If you are not male, then you're female. If you're not female, then you're male, right? But then now you have a lot of like LGBT that are coming in, and then if you try to make a profile in Facebook right now, you will see a lot of like different kinds of like gender classifications, and then it keeps evolving, right? Somehow that from like binary it becomes like 3 labels, multi-classification label, multi-classes label, right? And it becomes very confusing quickly. So all of those, you need to pay attention into it, because if you're feeding those into the model, then the model will become very confused and they don't know like what to assign into this if they are not prepared during the training, right? So this is very tricky, but MLOps trying to help you to do that. And then after that, it goes through the data. It could be in the data table somewhere, right? It could be sort of like sharded multiple days, and then you're trying to do training and testing on it, right? So you train and test the models, right? And after that, you might do a lot of different steps, such as feature engineering, hyperparameter tuning, all of those like big, big methods of like looking into the machine models. And then after that, you want to do model evaluation. So I guess like the common one is precision recall, F1, accuracy and whatsoever. So those are something that you want to do. The idea is that you want to find out what are the best models that you could use. So AutoML, like Google, actually does it, right? Does all the steps for you to do model selections until the hyperparameter tuning and whatsoever. So Google, I think they did a very good job in like releasing it to open source. So you can actually type Vizier, Vizier, which is like a very nice way to do hyperparameter tuning, and they automate all the different kind of treatments for you to choose like which model with a certain parameter that is the best, right? Only there you will talk about the DevOps. So like when you build a system or model, you want to version it. So the idea suddenly the current model is performing really well. Then we want to refer it back to the previous model. Have audit services. All the models are versioned properly. Rather, like similar when you are creating, like Excel sheet or some like essay for your university, fee 1, fee 2, and then like, or you can have a version, but then you decide, hey, I forgot a certain text, so you do like final version, right? I did it when I was in university, but yeah, if you do MLOps, they will do everything for you. There are some tools for you to help this auditing and versioning. And then by the end of the day, the code and model will be integrated together. There are a lot of testing there. And by the end of the day, it's a bit mouthful, but yeah, they will be pushed, deployed, monitored, logged, and after that, all the data itself will come back, right? So a very good way to look into that is that there's some sort of feedback loops, right? Like for example, if Gojek suddenly, right, only like very biased towards a certain district to sort of like run their services, then obviously all the user behaviors might be affected, right? And then it becomes a loop, right? So there's something that's called feedback loops that we need to like be aware of, right? So all of those are being trained in a recurring manners, right? Remember the iterative circle, and then if you combine to it, is that data, machine model, DevOps, and compliance, right? But of course, all of these tools, right, the tools that you're seeing here are the ones that are currently being used by companies, right, regarding all of the machine learning engineering life cycle that I mentioned to you about, right? So if you really want to learn about machine learning beyond, right, just training the model, MLOps is something that's very, very important right now. Yeah. Okay. So it's a lot of things. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be fun because it's always evolving. Okay. All right. So I spoke 30 minutes, right, about all of those introduction sessions about machine learning. So now let's talk a little bit about what's next for us, right? Maybe like as a student, is that how can you build your career in machine learning innovations, right? So one thing for sure is something that's really, really useful for me is that try to think how you can contribute to the community, right? To machine learning community. And this goes something beyond, your university GPA. So honestly, like for example, like one question that I always got is that should I get an A+ to get into Google, right? For example, or should I get, like Dean or valedictorian? Kalau di Indo, maybe like you have something that's called honor system, right? Like di UI, they have honor system, so first honor, that kind, right? And then like, oh, I need to be first honor to go to Google, right? Well, that is true to a certain sense, but I think one thing that I realized is that Google, they have like some sort of like segment that's called Googliness, right? And the idea is that they want to know what about you outside the university, right? So it's not only just studying, but what actually you have done with the knowledge that you study in university, right? So that's why I created this Contribute More, right? Machine learning expands a lot, right? And it's always moving fast. So you don't want to just read, but you want to write more and speak more, right? Share more what you learned, right? So read more will be something that you can think about how you learn. People love like reading. Some people love watching videos. Some people love just like getting their hands dirty, right? Go to Kaggle, get some data there, and you just build model directly and then deploy it as a Android apps. I think those are different learning styles, and everyone has different strengths in where they want to solve and learn machine learning, right? So keep experimenting with your learning capabilities. And then second thing is that you want to write about them. It's for you to scale to solve like yourself stand up code. The second one is writing, right? Writing in terms of blogs, articles. So I did both of them, right? So I created codes, like for example, to invest, because like after university you get income, and then the first thing you want to do is that what you use the money for, right? You can spend or you can invest. And at that point of time, I decided to invest, but I don't know what to buy, right? What stocks? Maybe go buy Goto stock, right? So I actually created investing value investing model, right? And then like put it into a dashboard that could be shared online. So currently it's down, right? And I didn't really fix it. But in the past, I actually created an article about it, and then it becomes, it blows up, right? And then the LinkedIn actually, and because it blows up, I actually get some invitations for interviews, and that's how I get into Google actually. Okay, and then the third one is speak more. So teach your fellow peers. There are so many different kinds of conferences out there. Bangkit is definitely a very good place for me to sort of like share my knowledge to Indonesians, because I'm also a fellow Indonesian. And then I always think like why there's not so many Indonesians that work in Google and Meta. So most of the professionals in the US and California are actually Chinese China, or the Indians, right? So I actually have some thoughts, maybe like in the future with Bangkit and everything, right? Once you share it, it could be something that can be used for like more Indonesians to work in the California and work for Google and Meta. And I hope I can share a little bit of experience on that more in Q&A. Okay. And afterwards, you want to take a look into generalization and specializations, because like machine learning is huge, right? You have like computer visions, you have generative AI, you have NLPs, and so many different kinds of things, right? You want to figure out first like what your interest is, and sort of like generalize it first. At the very least, you need to know SQL, right? So you need to learn in T, right? T will be like you have the breadth, which is the SQL, Python, right? And then you have the domain knowledge as your depth, right? Once you generalize, right, and then you sort of like know what you can excel more, where you are passionate, or maybe like can give a lot more efforts in learning, I think that's where that you want to go deeper, right? So for me, I'm actually going deeper into MLOps, right, which is thanks be to God, is actually what is in demand right now. So you might want to think, what can you focus in, right? And of course, you want to know like your biggest strength. If your biggest strength is in, talking to people, then maybe like project manager, like there's something that's called data PM. It's something that you might be interested, or maybe business analyst to sort of like look into like business acumen from certain data, right? So those are something that you might want to sort of like utilize, right? And then the second one is that communicate. Of course, you want to make sure that you can communicate your strengths and impact more, right? Making sure that it doesn't go unnoticed, right? But actually it can be publicized and people can learn from you as well. And there's a good book that I recommend. It's called Deep Work. I think I really, really like this book. And I can share with you a little bit more during Q&A if you have time. And finally, I think this is like the most important thing. Like you can forget about everything that I say, except for these slides, is that you want to have fun, right? Machine learning is fun, data is fun, and like working in big tech companies in Indonesia, you have something like Goto, Shopee, you have like Bukalapak and everything. There's so many big tech companies now that didn't exist as much compared to like 10 years ago, right? So it's a very good opportunities for you to learn machine learning, and machine learning is fun because it's tough, but you get to learn a lot. You have a lot more opportunities today. You want to work in London, you can actually do that. You want to work in Sweden, Germany, Japan, especially I can see that a lot of like these professionals, they are not really they have a bit of crunch in population number, so they will need a lot more manpower. And I can see that if you have this manpower and skills that sort of suits their needs, I think it's not impossible for you to actually go to Germany and become a software engineer or machine learning engineer there. So it's going to be very impactful. And this is also a tip for me, is that you want to hack, right? So keep hacking mindset. Is that for me, I always use my Saturdays. So my Sunday is my rest day, but my Saturdays, rather than going to like shopping centers or whatever, I try to maximize my mornings to learn new things, right? So you can see that I actually learn things with a friend, and this is at Google Office and in Singapore, right? So because I have some friends in Singapore, then I just like, hey, you want to learn together on Saturdays? So I think that's actually very fun things to do, and also like something that would be impactful for your career. And finally, celebrate the impacts. So again, like it's a good time to, it's going to be very, very much needed. And a lot of like companies out there, not only in Indonesia, they will need your help, they will need your power, they will need a lot of manpower. So all of those, they are going to open up more for talents all over the world, and I think you can be one of them. Okay, so that's all. I actually talk a lot more about this in many different kind of channels. Feel free to take a look into my Medium account and reach out to me. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, reach out to me on Medium, and please fill up tiny.cc/Vincent-survey. So I usually use this survey to sort of like evaluate myself and then try to train myself so that I can make a better presentation. So if you find that this presentation is not useful at all, you fell asleep, feel free to just let me know on survey. But if you find it useful, please also feel free to share with me on survey, right? And I'll try to improve myself next time. Okay. And for referrals, yeah, I'm also open to that. Please reach out on LinkedIn and let me know if you have like any questions. So it's just nice, 45 minutes for my presentation. So I guess I'll give back the time to Risma to help out with the Q&A.
Hello, Kak Vincent. Thank you, Kak. As usual, a great presentation, Kak Vincent. And I see there is some question, like maybe they really want to know about what you experience. Maybe you can start with Q&A something. So from Safida Afifah Firdausi, how do companies manage the distribution of the work or project management in machine learning? Is there any effective strategy for working in a team? Maybe like a great and big company like Meta and Google, with many of people in the, as your experience, Kak, your experience as machine learning lead in Meta right now, how this company distribute the work? And
Got it.
maybe is there any best practice, effective strategy working in a team?
Got it. Okay. Yeah, first of all, I want to say thanks, Hafida, for the question. I'll try to break it down because it seems to be a very huge question and very contextual questions, right? Like, first of all, is regarding the companies. There are different kinds of companies. So for this purpose, I would like to separate, the startups, like the smaller scale companies and the big tech companies, right? Like Google and Meta. Definitely, it's a big tech companies and global, right? And the scale itself is different from the, like currently the Asia Pacific companies, which is, let's say it's Gojek. There's no Gojek in USA, for example, but there is Gojek in Malaysia or in Singapore or in Indonesia, right? So I guess like I would like to focus this on like big tech companies global, right? So for big tech companies global, how do they distribute their work? So there is something that's called top-down approach and bottom-up approach. So the top-down approach is that, for example, I think you have something that's called like the top exactly that says, hey, we need to focus on top of certain products. So for example, like Reels is still a very new product, right? And then like there will be like people that are saying, okay, what do we want to do with Reels, right? How do you want to scale it? What kind of like metrics that we need to take a look? So they will just like trickle down, and there is a lot of like different teams that are talking about capacity, latency, like providing all of those servers, right, to make sure that we can serve the models. And there's also a team that does research, right? Like they purely does research. Their PhD people like graduating from Stanford or Berkeley and whatsoever, all those universities that you see in Spider-Man movies. So you have this team that I'm working very closely with, and by the end of the day, right, is that how can these separate teams, right, we are doing the like very specialized things, can actually build up the top KPI, right? So in Meta and Google or whatever, right? That in big tech companies like Gojek, maybe like Gojek, they use something that's called OKR, objective key results. So there is something that's called like top-down OKRs, where they decide what kind of metrics or North Star that we want to push. But there's also like bottom-up, right? So they might have like 7 items, for example, that could be the low-hanging fruit, something that we can do to push the needle. And then they will ask, okay, who wants to take this? Okay, I think you have experience in this, so you might want to take this. So they would suggest you, hey, do you want to take this? Or maybe like you understand the gap, right? You understand where, as a lead, right? Actually, one of the culture is that you identify the gap yourself and then you propose what you and your team should do, right? So that's how the distributions of it works. And all of those like OKRs from up to down to up, like they will sort of like, so it's not like dictatorial. It's not like like you need to do this. You have no way to say no. No, you can actually say no, and then you can also propose what you want to do. So I think it's very flexible. And then, is there any effective strategy for working a team? Obviously, there is none. Different teams, they will have like different setups. For example, I will have to say, like if you are in a very established team, like for example, Google search is very established, then usually there's not a lot of like like experiments that you can do, right? Because it's very much established, right? They have a lot of SOPs for everything. Everything is very well defined. It's just like you are in the army, right? They've been doing this for 20 years, right? So you know like what you're supposed to do. Compared if you are in Google X, which is something like that they are experimenting, or maybe like Meta, they have something that's called Reality Labs, Metaverse, doing things that are very new, nothing is defined. Then of course the idea is that you want to build something fast. You want to making sure that you have like potential impacts fast, and then try to build up on your successes, right? And then try to snowball it, and then of course lead the team along the way and whatsoever. So I think it really depends on the team, but I guess there's a very good dichotomy to sort of generalize it.
Okay, thank you guys. So as Kak Vincent said, every company have different culture, especially if you're in a big tech, they've already mature. And if you are in a small startup, actually, I don't know it's in English how to spell it, but in startup, most of small startup, they sell it as palu gada, apa lu mau gua ada. So they are not mature. So for the effective way, there is no, every group, every team have different like. So thank you. Maybe I will go to the next question. So from Raihan, how can we as Indonesian compete for an international career, like Indian people, Chinese people, and do we need to focus on certification, creating product, or continuing our education to a higher level, master of PhD? How as you can say before in presentation in Google California, there is not many Indonesian people. Most of them is in either Indian or Chinese China. How are your opinion?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess like I might be biased into this because this is based on my own personal experience and of course my personal observation, right? So actually, in terms of international careers, there are two things that you can do, right? First is the through schools, through universities like LPDP, like I mean everyone knows about LPDP, right? And then like some scholarships, right? I think I know a lot of like ITB students, for example, like they will go to California, study in Berkeley, and after that they just keep working in Meta or Google. So there are people that are doing that, right? So one is the true education, but I guess this true education is very limited, right? For the reasons that you need to pay money most of the time, right? And scholarships are very limited, right? So that's why I want to talk about the second path. So for me, I actually I work in the US not through education, but through my career, right? So for the through my career, right, is that I would start with, getting hired at Google, right? And then like work, try to make sure that I can become domain expert. And then after that, you will work with a lot of partners from USA. And then after that, you will go to USA, right? Something like that, right? So there is a natural progression because through your careers, you can actually find these needs in the different countries. I know a lot of like Indonesians that also go to Germany and then work for Delivery Hero, because in Germany there are a lot of like TechCrunch, right? And then like how do they find these careers? Is that they applied, and then they also like they also have like some like some differentiating points. For example, they don't only get like A plus in universities, but they also like do some codes on GitHub. They would publicize it. They actually solid contributor, open source, and they also like create products and communicate, making sure that there are actually users to the product. And of course, for me, I actually get into Google because I created this tool and also like created a Medium blog on top of what I learned in data, right? So all of those can be used. And I think for PhD wise, it will work. I think it's, if let's say that you are doing PhD in ITB, for example, and then you want to work in the US or maybe in London, then there are actually some people that are doing that as well. For example, they got noticed through their thesis, right? And then their thesis are being cited in Google Scholars, and then those citations actually make them a reliable domain expert. And then because of that, they get reach out from DeepMind, for example, and then they work through that. I think there are some Indonesian researchers in DeepMind as well in London that sort of like looks into the Google Brain, right? So they will look into like of what the DeepMind is doing, and then like developing products. They're doing some research in that, right? So yeah, I actually talked to some people that are having that. So I hope that's actually explained.
Yeah, thank you, Kak Vincent. Also, or you already do it by joining Bangkit, you will get international certification like TensorFlow, Android, and etc. And you can try to copy Kak Vincent's strategy by blogging, or you also can create a YouTube video and learn more. And so the recruiter will be notice you. So maybe we'll go to another question, Kak. So from Rizky Aditya, can you give any tips for a person who just get into a machine learning field about how can they prepare the knowledge they need to implement it later in industry? Maybe it's based on your experience, Kak, how you get into this field.
Sure. So let me try to how you can prepare the knowledge. Okay, I guess if you just got into machine learning fields, I think there are two things, right? Two different kind of conditions. The first condition is that you have time, right? So meaning that you're a student, first year, and then you're in university, and then you want to learn machine learning. Then you can take things slowly, right? You can sort of like, go to machine learning classes, learn about it, right? Getting the knowledge, and then after you graduate, then you work in a tech company, you intern in a Tokopedia or whatever, right? So you can do that, right? But I guess the second thing, which is a bit tricky, is that if you are in banking and then after that you want to learn the machine learning, I think I will have like different tips for them. like for example, like they might need to sort of like think about how they can integrate whatever that their strength is, and then like combining it to the courses, right? To sort of like minimize the time for you to learn, but at the same time put yourself as a domain matter expertise, right? So I guess for because it's bangkit, I think your situation risky is more towards the first one. So I guess like just try to think about what you are interested in, and then try to build a product using machine learning with what you are interested in, and try to garner users, garner some publications, talk to people about it, and try to iterate further, make something useful. I think that would be very, very impactful, because like let's say that you want to interview in Tokopedia and Google, and the first thing they will ask is that what have you done, what have you contributed, and then it makes a lot more sense if you have like, oh, I have Android Play Store app that does machine learning predictions for course scheduler or whatever, right? And then it has been downloaded by 10,000 of like Indonesia students, and then they have like 4.8 stars. It is a lot more convincing compared to you say, oh, I learned AI during my university. Oh, I learned machine learning during my university. I don't think it's as impactful compared to if you have the product and you have some results to show how your products contribute to society. Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, guys. So it's depend on you guys, and for all of the cohort, I think later they will have incubation, so they create a product. And for your machine learning engineer, if you want to focus on your machine learning program, and if you want, you can deploy it in Android store, and you can show it to the recruiter. I have done it, and this is my impact. So maybe let's move to the next question. Yeah. From Dinda Juliana, how do you see the evolution of the machine learning field over the last few years? What interests you about these changes, and has it been the challenge for you? Like maybe from the past, starting in 2021, AI has been booming. What's your opinion about this?
Evolution of, okay. Yep. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely something that's very impactful. I think for Indonesia, it has been very, very quick. I've been like observing like Indonesian trends, especially in terms of machine learning. So I still remember when 2014, 2015 is like when data analytics becoming a lot of like topics, right? Like people want to become data scientists, right? And then they start looking into like R and Python, and then try to build something, right? And then like it's still very new, very recent. And then you have like Tableau, Power BI, they are coming in and says, hey, you can build dashboards very quickly. And then like a lot of companies start like teaching their employees Tableau or whatsoever, right? So I guess like it's all started in 2014, 2015, around there. And then like it keeps like booming, right? And because like you can see that the money is flowing into, I think it follows the money. Like when you say that money makes the world go round, I think it's true to the extent of like how to explain a little bit about why machine learning can develop very quickly. It's because the money runs very quickly in those areas. So I guess like in the past, right, during those things, is that a lot of money coming to like building all these data tools for companies. And then after that, because the money comes into this ecosystem, the business, then they are thinking about, hey, we need to find talents, right? Where do we go to find talents? And then if you want to find talents, then what would universities do? They will create a course for it, right? So UI, I think there's the very first one in Indonesia to build up data science curriculum, right? And then after that, you have many different kind of universities that come in, and then of course like the third one is that once you have the economy and then you have the educations coming in, there's also political aspects. And I remember at that point of time in Jakarta, at the very least under Ahok at that point of time, is that they push a lot on JAC, which is Jakarta Smart City, right? And then they push a lot towards like working together with businesses and universities to sort of like create a very good ecosystem for talent to growth. And I think combined together with, like how Gojek grows a lot in Grab Food and whatever, and Grab coming in, Tokopedia coming in, Shopee, they open up here because they see a lot of market in Indonesia. Then all those three triads, we call it the triangle, which is like the economy, the business, and then you have the universities, and then you have the politics. It becomes like nurturing all the environment in terms of nurturing in Indonesia, right? Of course, that happens also in elsewhere. I think in the US, it's always the first one because of Silicon Valley. Meta and Google come from there. So what happened in Indonesia, it's actually very, very rapid, very, very fast, right? And of course, there's also like, because like the chip is becoming more and more, powerful. So now holding the data is not as costly as when we were having like IBM or maybe Nokia phone that time, right, which is very thick, right? We don't have the smartphones, but now our smartphones are actually as powerful as IBM supercomputer during the 1970s or whatever, right? So you can see that it's very, very fast, right? Because all of those three supports. And I can see that in the future, because generative AI brings a lot of like companies towards generative AI, a lot of like, like even like Meta and Google and whatever, many different kinds suddenly, teams suddenly think, hey, why not we tap into generative AI, right? And then they start building the tools themselves, and then more money coming in. And then like, it will become a lot more support, right? In terms of like education, in terms of politics. So I will not be surprised if I see like UE or maybe other companies, other universities, they will have like a degree for generative AI. So I think it will be what's going to happen, and this will be a very sticky because now everyone wants to be in the tech. And it has been very challenging in the sense that you need to stay relevant. So meaning that you need to keep learning. I think, for example, like if you have a parents that do agriculture, for example, then you might think that agriculture doesn't improve. It does improve, but then it doesn't improve as fast as technology, right? Maybe what your parents only know Zoom, for example, because they need to do Zoom to run their businesses, for example, right? So the idea is that it's growing a lot faster in Indonesia because Indonesia for agriculture, carpentry, whatsoever, is growing fast, and there are a lot of things that are going to be tapped. So I imagine that for Indonesia point of view, there's a lot more ideas to how we can build up solutions to sort of run different industries. So it will be machine learning as an enabler, right? For example, like the e-fishery is something that I think would grow a lot in Indonesia, because how big is the fishery industry in Indonesia? It's quite huge, right? Seafood and everything. Indonesia is archipelago. And then like you have like carpentry, you have a lot of like forests in Indonesia. There are a lot of like forestry graduates, like there's a degree that's called forestry, but basically they learn about forests, right? And they all come to Indonesia to learn about hutan. And then I was like, oh, okay, there's a degree about that in the US. And then these are like Berkeley professors, like huge professors. They very, very well renowned. And then they will come to Indonesia. So there will be a lot more like technology integrations in those industries that usually is traditional. Yeah. So I think you need to keep yourself relevant on that. Cool.
So okay, as Vincent said, that you must stay relevant, stay up to date, guys. You can start by reading some Medium blogs or like courses in decoding, right? Every year they update it because the IT technology industry is really dynamic. Every day, every hour, it's still changing. So yeah, maybe we'll go to another question from Mahmud Pratama. He want to know, what do you do when you feel burnt out when learning machine learning? He tried to hack like what you do, but he still burned out when he learned it. Maybe strategy Kak, for for learn to be not burn out because it's be stressful?
Sure. I mean, I won't say that I don't have burnout. I do sometimes feel burnout, right? But I do have like some tips to solve. Like, I think everyone will feel burnout because like it's moving very fast. It's very competitive, and then a lot of people now they feel left out. I think it's called FOMO. FOMO, right? Like, oh, you don't know machine learning, you don't know ChatGPT. FOMO nowadays, right? And yeah, so definitely I think it's a very prevalent problem. The other problem is imposter syndrome, um, and I think it makes sense because the idea that you will always have the feeling that you cannot really keep up. I think that's the thing in technology, right? If you are selling, let's say that you are fruit vendors, right? Opening a grocery stores, then you know that most likely like, oh, this is how it goes. You know the step by step, you know the SOP, and that's all you need to know. But for technology, it's not the case because they're talking about global landscape, right? For fruit vendors, maybe like you can become the best fruit vendors in Jakarta or best fruit vendors in Surabaya, but you never thought about becoming the best fruit vendors globally, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. But for technology, it's a thing, right? Because you're talking about global market, global economy, a lot of like opportunities, but at the same time, um, you will always feel left out, right? So I think that's personally my own struggle as well. So let me give you a little bit of tips. So I guess one tip is that you want to talk to people about it. Like if you notice, right, when I do the hack, like in terms of like, you know, Saturdays, making sure that I'm learning something, do something that's related to work that sort of like expand my knowledge, is that usually I invite people, you know, like to learn together with me, right? And it could be like, you know, Saturday morning, right? And then after that, maybe like you have lunch, you just like chill, watching Netflix or catch up with shows or whatever. So I think like by inviting people to sort of like studying to go to persevere together with you, I think that's very, very important. Because honestly, I can say that why I can sort of like contribute in tech companies, in big tech companies like Meta and Google, is because what? Because I'm surrounded by very smart people, right? I have this conversation in Google US before, and I was having lunch at Mountain View. There was like 4 people, including me, and we just sitting together, eating lunch. And then they were talking about the thesis, the PhD thesis that they were doing before they joined Google. And then one of them come from Johns Hopkins, one of them comes from Stanford, and the other one come from MIT. And then they talk. They are neuroscientists, you know, like that. They study about brain, and then they are super smart. They are doing PhD. And for me, I like those are the universities I never heard in Indonesia. You know, like I've never heard people talking about MIT, right, in Indonesia, right? It's a whole different levels, and you will feel the kind of feeling, and I do feel that. So the first one is that you want to have some people to persevere together with you, and second is that you want to be kind to yourself, right? In the sense that the fact that you're surrounded by smart people in tech is not a disadvantage, but it's an advantage because that's how you grow, right? You can never grow if you are the smartest person in the room, right? Like for example, if you are 6 SD, like 6 elementary school, and then you learn like first elementary school, you sit down in first elementary school, the learning speed is going to be very, very low, right? So it doesn't really make sense, like from SMP become SD again, right? But SMP, then you learn together with people that they are studying to become SMR, right? Then you can grow faster. Okay, so that's number 2. Be kind to yourself. Be grateful that you have people very smart around you. And then the third one is that, yeah, you want to have fun, right? Always have fun, keep smiling. Smiling is very hard, but it's very important because you want to think big, right? It's not only just like how you persevere, but what are the fruits that come from perseverance. So a good analogy about this, I always talk to people, is that you want to imagine like wine, right? You know, like grapefruits. Maybe like there's no grape in Indonesia, but if you know grapes, right? Wine, right? For example, the anggur merah bakal lebih manis kalau sering dipotong, gitu. So why lebih sering potong lebih manis, it's because that when you cut a lot of branches, all the nutrition will go to one branch. And because all the nutrition will go to one branch, the grapes become very sweet, very juice. The juice-nya bakal banyak banget, and it's become very sweet. And I think it's the way the thing is for this one is that when you sacrifice a lot, like for your free time, or maybe like persevere in this together, then at the very least, you know that the fruits is coming in terms of your skills, in terms of your career, in terms of like going to Germany to do tech. So I think those are the three things, right? Like the first thing, let me try to summarize it. So the first thing is that you want to make sure you persevere together, not persevere by yourself. And the second thing is that you want to make sure that you think about the circumstances, right? Be grateful, right? Especially regarding like how you have a lot of smart people around you. And then the third one is that you want to keep smiling and keep being hopeful for the fruits that are sweet. The anggur merah yang manis itu. Okay, that's all.
What a great tips and trick. Maybe not maybe, but all of us must be ever suffer from the FOMO and burnout, because right now with social media like TikTok and etc. we see the trend that like when he already 20 already have his own company, he already graduated from Harvard and etc. and we compare ourselves with them. Like I think the most of my experience also don't compare us with them, but don't make them as our enemy, but learn also from them. And for the Bangkit cohort, you guys have a channel in Discord. You can collaborate with others cohort and learn with them, like as Vincent said, to learn together and be grateful, guys. And maybe like we're gonna go to the next question. So from Samita BRC again, how do you stay up to date with the latest advancement and trend in machine learning? What resource would you recommend for continuous learning?
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for Sami. I think it's very good questions, like especially to stay updated. Yeah, probably we'll write about this more. But yeah, so the very first thing is that you need different situation. I think they will have a different updating strategy, right? So the very first one, if you're a student, right, and let's say that you don't know like what you want to do, you don't know where to dip in, the very first thing is that you want to explore. So in computing, for example, you know something that's called explore and exploit, right? I always use it to like think about like how I can update my knowledge. So explore meaning that you want to sort of like explore a lot more, right? You want to, let's say that you are just learning machine learning, you want to figure out like what is machine learning, then you want to explore. You open Kaggle, you look into some influencers out there, you listen to Bangkit, that kind of thing, right? Then you sort of like determine where you want to go, right? Where you want to exploit further, right? For example, suddenly I realized that I'm very interested in how I can create music with generative AI, right? Because I'm a musician, I play in bands, that kind of thing. Then you want to like exploit further there, right? Because that's where your interest is. And of course, you want to see like whether it's needed, right? Maybe like Spotify is needed, but there's no Spotify in Indonesia, so the opportunity is not good. So you need to like solve balance between the demands and supply kind of thing, right? So exploit and exploit. And if you are like me in career, right, 5 years in the future, for example, right, after you graduate, then you sort of like know that, hey, I need to exploit a lot more, right? Because for me, why Meta and Google hire me is because of mostly it's because of my MLOps skill, right? I know how to deploy things at scale. As simple as that. Why do they hire me? It's because if they give me a model, I would be able to make sure that it runs for billions of users, right? That's particular statement of like run a model for scale and reliability is what I do, right? I don't need to like, explore a lot more into NLP, for example, because that's not why they pay me for. And how do I get them? How do I get promoted? How do I get, like career advancement or whatever? Is that if I can do this one statement really, really well, right? So that's why it really depends on your stage. If you are still learning, explore more. But if you are me in a career and you know, for example, where you are specialized in, then exploit a lot more. And for exploitations, then the resources is a little bit different. The resources will be a lot more like specialized and focused in where you are giving the value, right? So for me, I would look into like different teams, making sure I can collaborate with them, making sure I know why they are doing this. I know like, for example, like if I deploy it in mobile, I cannot like deploy a very huge neural network or graph network models. Why? It's because later if you open the app on Android, then your battery will run very fast. Then if your battery will run very fast, you will complain, right? So I need to know all these demands, SLAs and whatever. I need to know this, right? And I think that's how you sort of like stay updated, by explore and exploit. Okay, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you guys. So guys, you can find by explore and exploit. You can find more material. Maybe you can learn in Kak Vincent Medium. He have a Medium. You can learn from him. You can find his interview in YouTube, and so you guys can learn from him. So maybe we go to the next question from Anika Nur Pratama. How do you effectively balance model accuracy, model complexity, and computational resource to enhance recommendation of reels? For reels, Kak? Is it okay, Kak, for you to explain about this?
Yeah, I can. Obviously, right? I cannot share dig deeper because it's company secret. But I can share with you the FB engineering, for example. Like if you want to know, they actually share, for example, some publicly, right? In terms of like what they're looking for, the models, they actually share that. Sorry, Risma, I think you're breaking up. Okay, cool. Yeah, so they actually share on that in FB engineering. So you can find a lot of like papers that are being released by Google and Facebook, Meta, a lot more, right? And they also deal a lot with MLOps, right? So let me give you a little bit of like example, right? Like in Google, in models perspective point of view, there's nothing that's called free lunch theorem. So no free lunch theorem, right? Which is like every model have their own pros and cons. There's always a trade-off, right? And usually the trade-off are within two things, right? Interpretability and accuracy, right? The more the complex the model is, they might be more accurate, but it's harder to interpret compared to the other way around. Also happens. For example, a lot of like these companies, actually, right? If you use logistic regressions, it might be enough. Why? It's because that logistic regression is simple, latency is low, you don't really need a lot of resources to train. And then by the end of the day, in case if something goes wrong, you can actually go to the model, take a look at the coefficient. Oh, it's because of this particular feature, right? So it's interpretable. It makes a lot more sense, right? Compared if you're like using neural network for everything, and then like if there are some issues, you need to train very hard, right? And there might be some latency or availability issues, right? And then like there might be no infrastructure that can support it. And it becomes like you train so much accuracy, but there's not much impact, right? Of course, right? It's just a very broad overview, but deeper overview is that you want to know the case by case basis. For example, precision recall, right? Why precision is more important? Why recall is more important? For example, during the pandemic, we know something that's called like swab test and then PCR, like antigen sama PCR gitu. Antigen kan is very like recall focused, and then PCR is more like precision focused. And it's because that it has different meaning, right? It has different use. Why not everyone just use PCR? No, it's because PCR is expensive. How much is PCR? 1.5 million, 1,5 juta. Antigen cuma berapa ya? 80.000 terakhir ini, panggil 80.000. And then we have like 100,000, right? And antigen, you can spread everything. You just want to make sure that if there's something catch, then maybe we can sort of like suggest them to do PCR, right? That's what we do in kayak di Garuda gitu, kalau mau terbang kemana gitu ya. So all of those need to have like these considerations. Jadi for Andika, I couldn't really tell for Will's perspective, But yeah, feel free to take a look into FBA engineering and try to look into that, right? And feel free to ask more on LinkedIn if you want to know more about like these considerations. Yeah.
Okay, maybe this answer for Andika. You can check the FB papers, and or maybe Google also have the open source and paper also, and connect to Kak Vincent Tatan LinkedIn. You can search it right now and connect. Kak Vincent is already accepted me as the connection. Thank you, Kak. And maybe go to next question. So from David, how can machine learning expert effectively navigate the rules and the cultural difference in countries like Singapore and Indonesia, and ensuring the project comply with the regulations?
Okay. Okay. I'm not really sure about the regulations here. So okay, let me try to assume if I have no way to clarify with you. So let me try to assume that you mentioned like in terms of the global culture versus like Indonesia working cultures, right? I guess in terms of like working in a team specific. So if that is the case, then I think there's not much difference actually, because like for example like Gojek, Gojek perspective, Gojek is actually taking a lot of like culture from US, from Google specific, because I do have a lot of like Google and Gojek colleagues, and their lingos are very similar because Gojek asks, if you know, they are invested by Google. So Google invests in Gojek. Whereas for Grab, they have a lot of like sponsors from Microsoft and from SoftBank, right? So if you work in Grab versus you work in Gojek, you will find a little bit of difference, right? Because usually the sponsors are the one, like for example, like Gojek, they will use GCP a lot, which is the Google Cloud product. And when you talk about OKR, which is like Google thing, right? Google have like objective key results. Gojek will have that as well, right? And how they do like performance evaluation is quite similar as well, right? How do they know whether it's get promoted is quite similar. So I think the culture of the working in the tech companies is not limited for like in Singapore you need to do this, in Indonesia you need to do this, in Japan you need to do this. No, but actually it really depends on what company that you're working on. So I think that's why for tech is very very open in the sense that you don't know about Japanese culture, you can still work in Japan, right? You can still work in tech. You don't need to do business in Japan. If you do business in Japan, then you need to know how to speak Japanese, right? You need to know Japanese culture. You need to borrow how many degrees for different business partners, right? But you don't need to do any of those if you work in Google Japan, or if you work in Indeed Japan. A lot of like Indonesians, they work in Indeed Japan. Indeed is like LinkedIn, but a different company from the US. Because why? Because they follow US culture, right? So I think that's the unique thing about technology, is that you have a lot of opportunities to work in a company which do not really care about like cultural and formalities, right? In a way, it's more cultural agnostics. But of course, exception is that if you work in sales, then you need to know all those things, right? But if you work in IT and technology, you don't really need to have this as your requirement. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. So this one, Kak Vincent, is for IT. Our area is not really care about these cultural differences, and it's really depend on the company. Okay,
Yeah.
next question. So from Nurul Aini Komarudin, as a fast-moving and constantly innovating company, how do you and your team keep machine learning algorithm relevant and adaptive to the change in usage trend and the user need? Maybe in Meta right now.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. There are. You remember the circle that I mentioned, right? It's always an iterative, right? In the sense that you don't just build a model, deploy, forget about it. I don't want to care about it. I just move on to the next shiny thing. No, you don't want to do that. But you want to sort of like nurture the model, update the feature of the model, making sure the feature itself and the label itself are something that's relevant, right? I think I mentioned to you, like for example, the gender thing, right? In Facebook, in the past, it's only two genders, male and female, but then now so many genders. So even for that, right, it's something that is, something that we never think of 20 years ago. You ask your parents, for example, they only know two genders, male and female, right? Cowok atau cewek, gitu aja, pria atau wanita. That's all, right? You can ask your parents, that's what they think. But then now, if you talk to like youngsters, maybe like in Singapore, for example, in USA, then they will think, oh, actually gender is a social construct, right? So this is a very different mindset from our parents, and in itself, right? You might not want to think only just about gender, but you might want to think, let's say that for recommendation systems or like social media, or even for Shopee, right? For fashion, for example. Today fashion and 5 years fashion, 10 years fashion is very different, right? Or maybe you can talk about something that's called Black Swan. So Black Swan is it's actually a term by by I can't remember, Talim. Yeah, I can't remember, but Black Swan is actually coined as a term to say that it doesn't happen often. It happens very, very rare, actually, very, very rare. But then once it happens, then everything changed. And it just happened recently. You know what? Pandemic. Our parents, yeah, in the past, maybe there was a SARS pandemic, but then I think there's no scale like the COVID pandemic, right? No one has that scale. So the probability of that happen is very, very, very rare, right? Our parents have never had COVID before, but once it happens, everything changed, right? The stock market changed, technology changed. Our parents now know about Zoom, right? Wedding now online. Yeah. So those are the things that Gojek, for example, they need to change. For example, if let's say that their traffic predictions is more towards SCBD or GBK, like all this like cool techie stuff in Jakarta Selatan, then now they need to sort of like, oh, let's focus on Grab food because people are working from home now. Yeah. So the model also changed, right? Otherwise, it becomes a very, very useless and even dangerous, right? So I think you stick with the circles and then keep iterative, making sure that you have the capacities to take a look into what's happening in the world and then try to adopt it as opportunity. I think that's the best. Yeah, this is just one more, but I think there's an analogy here. I actually happen to know some Mandarin as well. So in Mandarin, we call crisis as 危机. So 危机is actually crisis, right? And then, but if you happen to like cut it, right, 危 and then 机, 危 is meaning a 危险的危, which is like danger, right? And then 机会的机, which means opportunity. So what is crisis? Crisis is actually opportunities within danger. Jadi dalam kesukaran selalu ada opportunities. Yeah. So I think that's something that every tech companies need to adopt, right? Whenever they see crisis, they need to change. Yeah. Cool.
So thank you, Kak Vincent. So every crisis have the opportunity, guys, and you guys can become get the opportunity right now. And after the COVID, I think there is more other technology in Indonesia is already growing, but become more growing right now, such as a programmer job after the COVID is really, really big, and most of companies search for programmer right now. Okay, next question. From who's? Hi, Kak. How do you find fun in learning machine learning, and what are good practice for creating consistent daily habits and learning the machine learning? So maybe the daily activity when you learn. Can you share a bit?
Yeah, definitely. So how do I find a machine learning is that through keeping track of like I think one thing for sure in tech companies, I think this is quite surprising for me as well. Like I do ask a lot of my colleagues, like what do they like about tech, right? And how do they learn? How do they succeed? How they how do they get promoted, that kind of thing. And one thing I think they, which is a very good part of what they bring, especially in Google, right, is that they would create a document that is called snippets. Snippets. So what is snippets? Snippets itu SNIPPETS. So snippets. Daily snip, basically. Snip is like cut, snip. So it's a snapshot, snapshot. So they actually take a snapshot of whatever achievements, whatever contributions that they have done to the team. Or maybe like if, let's say that different team members, they will give them kudos. Kudos meaning they will give them thanks, right? Kudos based on Japanese thanks, right? Basically, kudos to you, something like that. So those cultures in Google, there's actually a journal, a system where they keep track of all the kudos that are being given. And then they will create something that's called snippets, which is like, if you want to know like what are the achievements that you have done this 1 year, these are the compilations, right? So it's a journal, like they call it bragging journal. It's a journal for you to brag atau menyombongkan diri. It's not a good name, but I think that's very important, right? Because the thing is that you don't know how fun your journey is if you never take a look around, right? Kayak kamu naik gunung, if you go up the mountain, and then kayak you feel very tired in the middle, you want to stop. I always think, aduh, kenapa sih gue naik gunung Rinjani gitu? Why do I climb Rinjani? Ayo, so tough. But then when you look at the surrounding, actually quite interesting. Like the crater, the sawah, the fields, everything. It's very cool. And then like, oh, I walked quite far already. And then like all of those, right? It becomes something for you to think about. Manjat gunung itu menyenangkan. Gitu. Climbing mountain is fun. Gitu. And then even better is that if you know that your friends say, hey, you know, the summit of Mount Rinjani is very, very good. You need to go up even further. And then you are more interested. So I think it's the same kind of analogy for learning machine learning, because you don't find the journey fun if you never take the time to take a look around. If you just walk, look down, then it will never be fun, right? But if you take a look around, you try to daydream about what will you do at the end of the summit, then I think then people will say, okay, after I go back down, then they will always say, they will go up again. Makanya orang-orang yang suka naik gunung biasa gitu ya. Nyesel pas naik gunung, tapi udah turun, mau naik gunung lagi. Gitu kan. Yeah, so I think that's very important. And of course, the good practices for creating consistent daily habits is also like that, right? Try to do a reflection, try to see where you are right now, take a look around, enjoy the journey. And then by the end of the day, if you trust in the process will bear fruits for you. So I think this is the same analogy as the anggur merah yang manis. Yeah, you will receive anggur merah yang manis itu by the end of the journey. Something like that. But it's never the end. It's always a milestone.
So I don't forget to look back and appreciate what we have done, guys. Like I also feel like if before I don't know about the Python, don't know how to code, and right now 2 years later I already know about this, and let's appreciate what we done, and don't forget to share it maybe to LinkedIn and etc. And also appreciate other people. So next question maybe from early learning, whether there is a way from us to know the machine learning model that we have trained is optimal for use, or it still needs to be improved. Is there any effective and efficient tips to know that, like evaluation?
Yep. I think this is very interesting. Actually, there are very interesting, like segmentations, right? In statistic, I think it's called something that like whether you can find the global optimum compared to the local optimum, right? Because you can do heuristics, but to sort of like find the local optimum, but there might be a global optimum somewhere, right? That's sort of like undiscovered, right? So there are so many different kind of ways to do like heuristics, right? So I think in terms of effective and efficient, it could be improved. And I think it's actually more a philosophy, right? I think the philosophy is like, can you find the truest truth, right? kayak bisa nggak cari kebenaran yang paling benar gitu. And then like itu filosofi banget sih ya. I learned it from a philosophy student from UI gitu. And then like can you find the truth? And I think it's also machine learning. Is that can you find the model that is the most optimum, right? It's similar thing, right? The optimal model is most optimum. It's very hard. And there are people that say, yes, you can find the truest truth, but some other people say, no, you cannot, right? Especially we have limited time, we have limited opportunities. So it might be the case that heuristics are the better way to go. So local optimum might be good enough, right? Because as long as we can serve it to the users, as long as we can push the needle, it might be good enough. But maybe if you want to find a better local optimum, then you need to spend maybe 5 years more, right? Then it's not worth it anymore, right? Because why do you want to spend 5 years if let's say the incremental increase is just very, very low, for example? So it really depends on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, if you go through research, if you do research in Johns Hopkins or MIT, or maybe like UI and whatsoever, right? If you do research, you want to create a thesis, then you want to find a model that could get this the most optimum, right? So I think it always goes hand in hand. And I think there are a lot more like generative AI improvement as well, sort of like to find what models that are most effective and efficient with regards to the resources that we have. Yep, I hope that makes sense.
So I think like the faster you fail, the sooner you succeed. Maybe you can already test it on your user or the customer, so you know
Yeah.
is it already achieved the goals or not.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe next question we go to Gary. Starting career directly is a well-known company such as Visa is an outstanding achievement. He already checked your LinkedIn and your company profile. Maybe can you tell us what kind of project or program that you did during college? Maybe like portfolio.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so this is a fun thing. I want to start with like why I'm taking IT. Actually, I didn't pick IT because like I chose to learn about technology, but actually it's because that I wanted to learn about business. But then I didn't get it. Jadi pilihan kedua aku IT. So my second choice is IT. But then I happen to actually like it and love it. And then during the universities, I tried to create a lot of tools to sort of like help people around me, because like I studied in the universities that are very business oriented. So I have a lot of like business friends that want to think about how to invest in stocks. And then the problems that they have is that when they want to invest in stocks, they copy paste all the information in Google Finance and then put it in the Excel sheet, right? And then I say like, but what happened if next month, new numbers coming up? Then what you do with the Excel sheet? Then they say, oh, I will do it again every week. Then they will do it for like maybe like 30 stock tickers and whatever, 30 stock tickers and whatever, right? Which is like very, very bad and very inefficient. So I will build a tool for them. And then because I built a tool for them, I also publicize it. And then somehow the tool become popular. And then I sort of like use it, put it in a resume, and then and then got the internship from Visa, right? So I think that's one thing that I go through. I built a tool not because I'm interested to build that tool, but I built the tool because I know that my friend has that problem, and then I think I can solve it. As simple as that, gitu kan. I don't care whether I use Python lah, I use Java lah. I think that time I used Java because Python is still not, it's okay. But Java is the common tools that are more used in that time. So yeah. I think this is a good. I hope for Gary it makes sense. So that's the kind of projects that I did during college, and sort of like keep going on until I get to Google. And then after I get to Google, actually finding job is much easier. And yeah, so I hope that makes sense to you. Just build something that your friends that sit next to you maybe need, right?
So maybe start with create the project that from real world problem, right?
Yeah, correct. Just talk to your friends. In university, I think it's a very good way, especially you can talk to people, not only in computer science, but in kedokteran, in business, in accountancy, and they have like different problems that you can solve with IT. So I think that's a very good way to get started.
So maybe there's already many questions from the student. Maybe I can ask some question. Maybe two, Kak. Like maybe our us mostly in cohort Bangkit is in our final year, and what the essential preparation as a fresh graduate amid the increasingly competitive IT industry to achieve
Yeah.
success comparable to Mas Vincent level. Yeah. Because
Okay.
right now in IT, I think there's some tech winter, Kak. Gitu.
Tech winter. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. About the tech winter, let me comment about it, and after that I jump straight. Tech winter, I think don't be pessimistic about it because it's tech winter if you compare to 2021. But it's not tech winter if you compare to 2019, right? You understand what I mean? Because um, 2021 is just abnormal. 2021 is very huge. It's outside the norm, right? So maybe like you have a lot of like seniors that graduate in 2021, then it's good for them. But it's not normal. What's normal is 2019, right? So before pandemic, after pandemic is definitely different. So I think it's tech winter if compared to 2021. But if you take a look in 2019, actually there's a lot of good reasons to be optimistic. Okay, that's one. And then like regarding how you can prepare, I give you three simple tips. So the first one is resume. You want to make sure that your resume is what the company needs. Because why a company hire you is because that you can solve their problem, right? So you want to give a lot of signals that you can solve their problems. So that's number one. Number two is definitely to sort of like prepare a portfolio or like grades. If your grades is good, then obviously you need to put in resume, right? But if your grades is not good, it's fine. Try to think about how you can signal your manager that you can solve their problem, right? Maybe you can learn about how you can um, scrape informations online, right? And then I put it into a tool, make an automated data directory and whatever, or even like make a data analysis out of it that is useful for them, right? Give them a signal that you can do data analysis really, really well. So that's number two. And number three, I think is also like networking. So I think tech companies is unique because they treat referral seriously. Yeah, referral. So I think go to Tokopedia, TikTok, Google, and even Meta. If you refer people, right, they will put on top of the stack, right? So the referral people will be higher than people that do not get referral. They just they just apply directly, right? And even better, right? If they get hired, the one that refer them actually get cash. They get money from referring people that enters into the company. So TikTok, Meta, Google, they all give this, and I think it's unique for tech companies. So those are the three things that you want to make sure, right? So number one is resume. Number two is making sure you have the portfolio that signals your capabilities, and number three, the get networking. So try to network with people that you trust, your seniors, and have them refer for you because I think a lot of tech professionals we want to refer people. Yeah.
So maybe my last question, Kak. Like you said, like networking or as a fresh graduate, like final student, can how we fresh graduate effectively network and build professional connection with the IT industry, particularly like a big tech like Gojek, Tokopedia, or even Google and Meta.
Yeah, that's a very solid question. So there are many different ways, but I think I'll share you two. No need to remember so many. So the first one is community. So there are a lot of community like UE. I know they have like competing community. So they do like like computing competitions together, data analytics competition together. So I think that's really good because smart people go together with smart people. I think that's one thing. Companies that are led by people that work in Google and Meta, I think technically they are able to gather a lot of like employees, smart employees as well, because smart people will want to follow smart people, right? So you want to be surrounded by smart people by joining these communities. I guess like Bangkit is also one community, right? Together with smart people. So that's definitely one thing that you want to do, like be involved, make sure that that you can learn from them, that by the end of the day you can also network with them, right? Build relationship, right? It's not just, hey, I only care about referral. No, it doesn't work that way. But you need to really build relationship. And finally, right, the second one is of course like LinkedIn, right? I think LinkedIn is a very good way to be noticed by recruiters, especially if you have a good social presence. So make sure that you can contribute to society. Let's say that you build a tools. For example, for me, I blog. I blog very consistently, and then like I use LinkedIn to communicate my blog, and then I got reached out by Google Recruiter because of this blog of mine. So I think this is very important. So how I get to Google is because the Google Recruiter knows me from LinkedIn. And how do they know me from LinkedIn? Is because when they type machine learning on LinkedIn, my name is the first one on top. Jadi nama aku paling pertama. So I think that's two things that are very important: community and LinkedIn. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Vincent. Actually, I also got job as mentor in Bangkit because of our alumni and Sadra. So guys, make sure you guys start networking, start with LinkedIn, or you can, like Vincent, start by blogging and etc. It's really helpful for you guys. So maybe Kak Vincent, we go to last question from cohort Kak. From Kezia. Kak Vincent, can you tell us about particularly challenge machine learning project you work on, how you overcome obstacle? What is your memorable project?
Okay. Yeah, actually, okay, let me show you a project, how I get promoted at Google, for example. I actually have a Medium article on it, but yeah, there's actually one crisis that I managed to make it into an opportunity, and then it becomes, it becomes a promotion case. So one particular project is that when I was at Google, what I did is very simple: is I protect you against phishing attacks. Atau aku melindungi kalian dari website bodong, gitu istilahnya. So if you see website bodong or like fraudulent websites, then we will give you a warning. Hey, you shall not touch this website because there are people trying to harm you, steal your credit card, or take your retirement funds, that kind of thing. So that's what I did at Google. And one particular time, the machine model that I led flagged healthcare institutions in the middle of pandemic. So it becomes like a huge crisis because like imagine like suddenly I block these particular websites that are very widely referred by people, and then like and then it becomes like huge publication hit, and because of that, like I remember at a point of time there are a lot of like scares towards like this machine model that I created. But by the end of the day, what I did is that I would look into some particular signals, right, to solve like, hey, maybe we can still run the models, but rather than like try to eliminate the false positive, we can actually reduce the impact of the false positive, right? And why we have this is because that actually the false positive is a huge impact, but from model perspective, the test sites, there's a particular sub branch that is doing a test sites on like payment website. So I cannot share with you what's the brand, but because of this particular test site, we flag the website, right? and then it becomes a half fork. So the idea is that it's not really false positive, but it's a false positive which is a high impact from our business point of view. So let's try to find a signal that sort of like can reduce and mitigate the false positive. And one is PageRank, because if you know like Google, why people use Google is because of PageRank, right? There's a secret formula. Actually, it's why the Google search becomes very important. So I actually use this feature of a PageRank, and I sort of like implement the model that says that, hey, I think these sites, right, even if you find that there are some particular maybe fraudulent sites, but because these sites are being referred by so many influencers, that you shouldn't flag it, right? You should actually move on to a different site that maybe like newer or maybe like safe to flag in a way, right? And because of that, I can be more aggressive with the model. I can reduce the threshold, increase 100, and I think I have like 150,000 flags per day, which is like more than 23x of like what we have been flagging. It becomes like one of the biggest. Actually, Sundar Pichai, the CEO, referred to it during the middle of pandemic because of this tool that we created, and because it's super huge and they are high accuracy because of simple reason. Just add on a PageRank, just add on safety net, right? On the model, and it's not even modifying the model. It's just like adding an extra layer to sort of like mitigate the risk of whatever the model is producing. So because of that, I actually got promoted. So it's something that's interesting.
Interesting, guys. Especially in Indonesia, I think there's many phishing website like they call it like a bank need to you to input your password and etc. In Indonesia is so many. So your project really helpful for people, I think. So maybe Kavisan, it's already 5:21. All of the presentation and all the knowledge you gave to us. Is there any like conclusion that you want really to tell us, Kak?
So really, I guess like I actually have a blog that was created by Bangkit. Like they interviewed me, like why I keep like contributing to Bangkit, because I think like Asia has a very good future, especially in tech. The reasons why is very simple. It's because we are the fourth most populated country in the world, right? I think fourth or third, I can't remember, but meaning that compared to China and India, our populations, our manpowers are actually a lot. And imagine like if the tech universities and everything start teaching tech, and then like Indonesian talents are become, I think there's a lot of companies that are going to invest in Indonesia. Yeah. So I think now is maybe like sort of like winter storm compared to like tech winter compared to 2021. But in the future, I can foresee that a lot of companies, like maybe Google, will come to Indonesia, set up the engineering hub. I don't know. Maybe in the future they will do that. But I can see a lot more companies that are investing money in Indonesia startups, Indonesia tech environment. So I think with that, I will give like 3 tips and closing. Is that first is that stay hopeful. Second is that persevere together. And finally, I think I will have to say that one part that I think is really useful is that keep smiling and pray, right? I think prayer and smile. Don't forget to pray. Ya, doa itu penting. Doa itu adalah komunikasi kita dengan Tuhan, ya. So dengan Allah. So it's very important for you to pray, especially during tough moments regarding the tech winter and whatsoever. So just remember those 3 things, and I think you'll be great. Yeah.
Thank you, Kak Vincent, for your knowledge and your sharing your experience and the conclusion that Kak Vincent gave. And guys, Indonesian is big market. I hope someday, or maybe for the next 10 years, Indonesia emas, they say, we can become more powerful than other country in Asia, even in this world. Like we can become like second China or America. So guys, first of all, I want to tell you guys, don't forget to fill the attendance form because you will get point, and don't forget to comment on channel Bangkit YouTube say thank you, Kak Vincent, for your experience. And I think that is today. And I just want to say, guys, Bangkit is the opportunity that Google and others company give to us, and appreciate it and use it in a wise way. And thank you, and have a nice day today. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kak Vincent.
Thank you semuanya.